After a massive period of tension Hollywood had in 2023, they needed a win for this year. If anything, they were desperate for a win. The biggest studios in the industry were hemorrhaging money with miss after miss, and half of their scheduled output was pushed because of the writer strikes. But as the smoke cleared, was 2024 the win they needed? Honestly, I think this year was the worst in terms of creative output. Here's a list of the top 20 highest grossing movies of the year. Notice anything? They are all remakes of a pre-existing IP, new adaptations of a pre-existing IP, or sequels to a well-known IP. The highest grossing original movie of the year was John Krasinski's If, which is 22 on this list, earning just shy of $200 million. That's nothing to scoff at, of course, but when you compare the top highest grossing movie, which was $1 billion, you see the problem. Since the year was all about recouping losses after the strikes, studios played it relatively safe with movies that will guarantee some profit. And while it did prove itself relatively well for the studios that made the movies, think about what that means for up-and-coming writers and what this signifies. To me, this is a sign that originality in filmmaking is on its way out. Studios right now are terrified to take risks with original IPs or stories. If it isn't based on something or a continuation of something else, there's no chance it's being greenlit. Remember when we all collectively chuckled at this clip from Free Guy?
IPs and sequels, that is the thing that people want.
Yeah, this is what we're living in now. And it's a little disheartening. But don't think I'm only blaming the movie studios for this decision. As out of touch as they are, they just want to maximize profits at the end of the day. And this is where we come into play. If we wanted original stories, we should have went out to watch them. If we wanted to support unique ideas, no matter how bizarre, we should have put our money where our mouth is and watched them. But no, we made this list end up the way it did. We have as much to blame for original creativities and ideas being drowned out by IPs and sequels. With that being said, the movies I ended up watching this year were a solid mix of original stories and IPs that I was really into, and I'm personally quite proud with this list. I didn't really watch a lot of bad movies to warrant a bottom 5, with the only 2 I watched being the universally panned ones. So we can skip them and stick with my personal top 10 best movies of the year. Ready? Here we go. Number 10. Trap. This was a weird one for me. I watched it out of pure curiosity, because I heard a lot of good things about this movie. This is also the second movie ever I watched from writer-director M. Night Shyamalan, with the first being The Last Airbender. So I went in not knowing anything about him, his storytelling style, and his appeal. And honestly, I kinda liked it. Trap is about a father who brings his daughter to a concert, which is a massive sting operation to nab him. Why? Because he is a serial killer, and I like how the movie immediately establishes that, as it pivots to how he escapes the sting operation. This is where the movie is best, as the first half plays out like a very elaborate chess match. You see the routes of escape with the main character, you start planning the sequence of events with him, things go sideways and the route gets blocked, so you switch plans with him. It's an incredibly engaging and immersive thrill ride, which is massively carried by Josh Hartnett's chilling performance. It honestly reminds me a lot of Jake Gyllenhaal's performance in Nightcrawler, which is a massive recommendation if you haven't seen it. I also like how the FBI agent in charge of the operation is really good at predicting his plans and making him constantly shift his strategy. If the movie was just that, it would have been much higher at the list. But the second half takes a severe nosedive when the singer, who's also in on the operation, follows the serial killer to the operation and tries to emotionally manipulate him into slipping up. This is where the writing tries and fails to give a motive and explanation to the killer, which comes across as very half-baked and goes nowhere even at the end. The wife starts spouting revelations, the killer gets more unhinged, there's mommy issues, and it's all just... huh? Dude, Shyamalan was doing so well with the first half. What the hell is this? Around the second half, I stopped really taking the movie seriously. But the first half had me in such a tense grip that ultimately made me like this movie more than I dislike it. So yeah, it's a fun watch. Moving on to number 9. Transformers 1. This is another surprise for me actually. I watched this with a friend who really loves Transformers. While I am impartial to this IP. I know the broad strokes, I know who the popular ones are, but if you ask me to tell you what Beast Wars is, I don't know. So imagine my surprise when I ended up having a lot of fun with this movie, which takes the broad universe of Transformers and turns it into a story of friendship, betrayal, conspiracy, and morality. It doesn't expect you to know everything about every character, but it lets the story speak for itself as you get to know this movie's version of Optimus Prime, Megatron, and other random characters I don't remember. It also has some really solid casting choices, with Brian Tyree Henry's Megatron being one of my favorite vocal performances in a movie ever. Speaking of Megatron, the dynamic with the lead characters is also really well done, and the excellent pacing helps you get emotionally invested of the shift in their relationship. Yes, you know from context clues what would happen, but the moments still hit because of how well it's written. It also has some really great visuals, stunning art direction, and decent action set pieces that are a delight to sit back and watch unfold. Of course, I do have some issues with the pacing, as some parts could be a little slower, and I don't really like Chris Hemsworth's vocal performance as Optimus Prime. I'm actually in the minority with that opinion, so maybe it's just a me thing. And maybe some aspects of the story could be explained more, because while I do like how streamlined the narrative is, there's a lot of cool stuff that's left unexplored, like the relationship between the Cybertrons and Quintessons, why the manufactured class system was created, and how Paramount fucked up so badly with marketing the movie, because how do you fumble a movie this good? It's such a shame Paramount didn't believe in this movie and just let it flop in the box office. But I do hope the critical reception was a good slap in their faces to warrant more films like this, because we need more of this, and less Moana 2. Up next, we have number 8, Dee Dee. Dee Dee is a coming-of-age movie about Chris, a Taiwanese-American guy in 8th grade, around the beginning of the internet, as he uses it as a way to express himself, and to try to love himself as he deals with his very real issues. Where have I heard this plotline before? Yes, let's get this out of the way. This is 8th grade, but from the perspective of an Asian writer. They both tackle similar plot beats, but where 8th grade is about sexuality, Dee Dee is about racism. And as a minority in my own country, a lot of the moments here really hit hard. There's such a personal edge to this movie that I can't help but get sucked into Chris's journey. It also helps that the movie is directed better, with such a nostalgic yet sweet view of a kid figuring out how YouTube works and unintentionally discovering racism. The movie also boils down to Chris's relationship with his mom, who's my favorite character in the movie. She's a single mom trying her best with two little shits, while also trying to pursue her own passion, all the while dealing with a naggy mother-in-law while her husband is back in Taiwan. I don't know, it reminds me a lot of my own upbringing, and I love how Chris comes to see that by the end. I do wish the family stuff was more of the central focal point, because a lot of Dee Dee's plot beats are disconnected from his family, but the best moments are with him and his mom or his sisters. I do wish Chris wasn't that aggressive of a little shit to his family. While I do get that him learning to appreciate his family is the arc, it doesn't make him a likable character for majority of the movie. It also doesn't help that it hits similar beats and it's set in the same time period as 8th grade. And I don't blame anyone for thinking this was slightly derivative. Honestly, the family stuff was the major selling point for me. So for that alone, I would recommend it. It's also fun to revisit early internet nostalgia before the current cesspit we live in today. Moving on to number 7, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. This movie had some big shoes to fill. It was the first big reboot announced after Disney bought Fox, and it was coming off the heels of a masterpiece of an original trilogy. But somehow, the creative team behind it pulled it off. Instead of trying to continue the story that wrapped up nicely with war, Kingdom opts for the start of a new story, set centuries after the Caesar trilogy, paying respects to the legacy while also recontextualizing it in some interesting ways. Having the antagonist of that movie be a false prophet that mangles Caesar's ideologies is such a good concept, and having the main character not really know anything about Caesar makes this movie more accessible for a general audience. It does have some story and pacing issues around the third act, but otherwise I think it's a solid continuation / reboot of the series. This is another movie that just barely broke even, so I don't know if Disney will greenlight any sequels. But I hope they do though. But that's all I want to say. I made a full review about this movie already, so go watch that for more of my thoughts. At number 6th place, we have The Substance. You know the biggest mistake I made with this movie? I severely underestimated how messed up it was going to be in terms of visuals. I watched this movie at 1 AM while eating a late dinner. Yeah, it was a struggle to keep it down. Anyway, The Substance is about a veteran model losing her job after age diminishing her looks. So she undergoes an experimental medical process to create a younger version of herself. Every year we have one of these artsy avant-garde films, and I'm so glad this movie is being talked about by a lot of people, because holy shit, this is one of my personal favorite movies of the year. It's aggressively loud with its messaging, the cinematography is uncomfortable yet also haunting, the visuals and sound effects are disgustingly cool, and it's all practical by the way, and it has some excellent performances all across the board. Demi Moore's casting as the veteran model is genius, with the meta element of having a veteran actress herself show the treatment she must have received in Hollywood over the years. And she delivers so much dramatic pathos and a painful relatability to her character. and Margaret Qualley does a damn good job too with what she's given. The progression in the second half is also really natural and logical with the rules of the movie, and it has a more character-focused tinge to it than I would have predicted. And I love the crescendo into a brutally disgusting, darkly hilarious, and emotionally powerful third act. If I have a lot of positives to say, and it's my favorite movie of the year, why isn't it higher? Because while I do get the message and how it's delivered, it doesn't really leave much to interpretation and letting you think for yourself, which does kill any rewatch. And I do wish the excessive nudity is toned down just a tad. I get what they're doing, I really do, but man, you can get your point across without 10 straight minutes of the camera going right up her ass. All in all, it's a must-watch from me, and I will riot if this doesn't get an Academy nomination for either Best Visual Effects, Best Direction, or Best Screenplay. Do it, Academy, you fucking coward! Anyway, number 5. Maharaja. I had a rule when I make these lists. I wouldn't put any movie from India unless they absolutely deserve it, because I dislike Indian cinema a lot. I dislike how it's very star-focused, I dislike how you can make shitty recycled stories but still make your money back by having an A-lister being the leading man, I dislike how endlessly political they end up being, I dislike the lack of real risk-taking with the South, and I dislike the types of characters they come up with. So believe me when I say that the only real reason I broke my own rule was because this movie deserves it. Maharaja is about a dad, played by Vijay Sethupathi, who files a case with the cops after his prized family possession is stolen. The joke is that the prized possession is a cheap, rusty trash can, so nobody takes him seriously. But then it's discovered through clues that there's more to the story than just a cheap, rusty trash can, as he uses the story as a cover to find who assaulted and raped his daughter. It is incredibly rare to find an Indian movie that takes risks with the writing, and this movie does something I don't really see a lot of. It makes you guess and it makes you second guess. It uses non-linear storytelling and matching elements in such an interesting way that keep you, the audience, constantly theorizing, only to then smack you with big bombshells after big bombshells. It uses Sethupath's incredible range in interesting ways, as he rapidly switches from a vengeful beast to a heartbroken man. It's such a banger on rewatches, which is not something I normally look for with Indian movies. It could have absolutely used more fleshing out with some of the characters and plot beats, as some are sort of abandoned. And it does take a while for the real hook of the mystery to sink into you. And yes, because of the fact that it's from India, a woman gets sexually assaulted is a standard element for movies. But for what it's worth, this is the type of new concepts that I've been dying to see from Indian cinema. Please give this movie a try if you haven't, because once you get past the language barrier, and the slightly off-putting imagery, there's some solid gold here. Moving right along to number 4, Inside Out 2. Inside Out is in my top 3 favorite Pixar movies. So of course I'd watch the sequel in theaters. Keep in mind, I don't really like watching Disney properties in theaters anymore, because what's the point? I have Disney Plus. But no, this movie deserves my theatrical viewing, and honestly, it was worth it. Considering how Disney sequels rarely live up to the original, this was a really well done expansion of the first with the world building and the themes. It does reuse certain set pieces and locations, but remixes them in new ways that again fit the narrative they're going for. That scene where Imagination Land is turned into an overthinking sweatshop feels oddly meta and anti-corporate, which is kinda interesting. It doesn't reset the original characters too much either, but it also doesn't make them perfect where they don't have anything new to learn. The new characters are sorta useless except for Anxiety, but hey, they do add to the movie and its messages in some capacity. The movie also has a more small-scale central conflict to drive the narrative. The first movie had Riley move to a new city entirely and uproot everything she knows, and this one is her striving to be the best in a hockey camp. I can see how some people might find that inferior to the first, but I like how the smaller scale leads to a more character-focused narrative, leading to a slightly more mature film. I don't know, this is a really good and well thought out sequel, and I don't mind having more movies in this series, provided they keep the same level of quality and consistency throughout. Again, I have a video about this already, so there's nothing more for me to say. Moving right along to another movie that's set in India but not in Indian language, number 3, Monkey Man. I completely forgot this movie came out this year, which sucks because it was one of the best action movies of the year. Monkey Man is directed, written by, and stars Dev Patel as some nameless kid in the backstreets of India. He gets his ass beat in underground fighting rings for money, but that changes when he stumbles into a past of revenge against the people who took his life away. The production stories about this movie was so interesting. how nobody wanted to give Patel a shot to lead an action movie, so he just made one himself, how he initially made this movie for Netflix but they had cold feet with releasing it due to the subject material, how Jordan Peele saw it and bought the theatrical rights to it from Netflix because he believed in Patel's vision, how India still hasn't screened this movie because of its very anti-government, anti-conservative themes. Like, the main character gets saved by the Indian trans community, who are in hiding because politicians think that they're against the natural order. No wonder conservatives didn't want this movie to be seen. Well, fuck them, this movie fucking rules. It wears its aesthetic influences on its torn sleeves so well, but instead of just doing another John Wick, this movie outdoes The Wick with a real emotional core and a much more ugly setting. Similar to how The Penguin showed a much more desolate side to Gotham, this movie shines a harsh light on the seedier part of India, yet also celebrates its rich culture in a way that only an Indian can. You just feel Patel's anger, disdain, but also pure love for his country shine with the writing, and it doesn't try to conform to what would appeal to American audiences. It chooses to stand on its own 2 feet with such confidence that I can't help but applaud Patel for. Not only that, this movie has some actual sauce. The action scenes are so bloody, so grounded, and so fun to watch. They don't pull any punches, and they have some really sick choreography and set pieces. It reminds me of the dingy look of the first Matrix movie and how real it all felt. It also has a solid character journey for you to follow, so there's real meaning behind each scene and each decision the main character makes. You get invested into the journey and feel the same things he does. I initially had this movie slightly lower, but only while writing did I switch them last minute, because I really love this movie. More people should see it. Put it on another streaming service. Dev Patel deserves all the awards, and we need more people like Jordan Peele willing to take a chance on something so out there, fresh and unique. Okay, number 2. The Wild Robot. This comes as a surprise to no one. We all knew this movie was gonna be good just from the trailers alone. We all knew that Chris Sanders can cook. But did we know he could cook this hard? I didn't. The Wild Robot is about a helper robot, voiced by Lupita Nyong'o, who gets marooned onto an island and tries to find her purpose by helping the animals. Everyone has gushed about how visually gorgeous this movie looks, but not a lot of people talk about the writing. This is one of those rare kids movies that don't talk down to its audience. It doesn't suffice for the usual kiddie shit. It has some actual dramatic tension and a lot of dark humor. It doesn't shy away from how scary the wilderness actually is, and it still tries to find some light in the darkness. This is also a rare instance where celebrity voice actors are actually expected to voice act, instead of just coasting by what they're best known for. I know some people who don't really recognize Pedro Pascal, Mark Hamill, or Kit Connor just because of their convincing vocal performances. Hell, I didn't recognize Hamill was in the movie, and I have played over 200 hours of the Arkham games. The story is really simple, but Lupita's stellar vocal performance brought so much depth and emotion into the main character that it elevated the story to a new level entirely. I'm not ashamed to say that it absolutely made me cry in the theater. I can see a lot of kids and parents finding something for them with this movie, as it speaks to both sides. How parents are just trying their best and how kids are smarter than we give them credit for. Not the current generation, because I worry their brains are fried with the copious amounts of boom bringing. Okay, a bit of a tangent here, but I'm in utter shock when I realized what the Rizzler was singing. There's no chance she's coming back. You mean to tell me this motherfucker can steal your bitch if she wants? Dude, if your girl ditches you for the fucking Rizzler, that says a lot more about you. Okay, but back to movie. Very good, fun for the whole family, you might cry. Next! Oh, we're already at number 1? Well then, this should be fun. And my personal top movie of 2024 goes to... Amaran.
This is the face of the Indian Army.
Like I said before, for an Indian movie to be in this list at all, it has to be really good. And for an Indian movie to break this high, it has to be really goated. And Amaran falls into this category, which makes it even more surprising is that I expected this movie to suck. Let me explain. Amaran is a retelling of a real soldier in the Indian Army, Major Mukund Varadarajan, who served from 2006 to his death in 2014. He was instrumental in a massive counter-terrorism operation in the state of Kashmir, which posthumously earned him the Medal of Honor. This movie is also produced by renowned veteran actor Kamal Hassan, who has made a couple movies in the past with some slightly Islamophobic themes and imagery. Having him cover a story that's about the currently Hindu-led India fighting a battle in Kashmir against Pakistan, a Muslim country, in this political climate, I saw this as a really bad move even before the movie came out. But then we got more promotional material, which focused more on the relationship between Mukund and his wife, Indu Rebecca Verghese, painting it as more of a romance drama. Okay, it doesn't change my opinion, but nice to see them trying to appeal to a different audience. And finally, the movie came out, and my sibling dragged me to see it in the first week. And I am in shock at how much I liked this movie. It is still one part war biopic and one part romantic drama, but writer-director Rajkumar Periyasamy brought out the best in both so effortlessly. The movie takes its time introducing the main characters, showing how they get together, and what Mukund's main drive is with life, how he was inspired to join the army and what he would sacrifice to do it. It treats its character with such depth and maturity that I've never seen in Tamil movies. It also treats its subject matter and themes with such nuance and objectivity, trusting its audience to come to their own conclusions and lean either way. It would have been the easier and more obvious answer to be very against Pakistan and Muslims because, but no, it shines a light on the motivations of both sides of the aisle, giving enough of a case in both and letting you decide for yourself. As for the romance drama, there is always a layer in tragedy and pain with each interaction the main couple has. Because we know from context and within the first scene that Mukund does not live to the end of the movie, but you don't really know how or when. So to them, each phone call could always be their last, and that's heartbreaking. It's also sold beautifully by Sivakarthikeyan and especially Sai Pallavi. Further context, this guy has been a comedy actor for the most part, as his breakout and most recognizable roles are either usually comedies or rom-coms. This is a massive risk for him to take on a war biopic, and instead of relying on his usual natural charisma, Siva completely disappears into the role and gives his portrayal of the late soldier the respect it deserves. But the real heart of the story comes with Sai Pallavi. Good lord, she's amazing. She's not only a sweet wife and amazing solo mother to Mukund and their kid, she also has to go through so much. She doesn't see her husband for months on end, only getting fractions of fleeting moments together. She hears firsthand as his team gets ambushed and slaughtered, not even knowing if he survives. And she's immediately expected to stand in for his legacy after he dies, not even allowing herself to grieve. It's brutal, and Indu is such a fucking badass. This movie rules, and I'm not even into war epics. If you have a Netflix, and again, if you can get past the language barrier, please give this movie a shot. You will absolutely not regret it. Of course, these are all my personal opinions. Obviously, there are a lot I missed because I either didn't watch them or was too late to see them in theaters. I might watch Wicked after this movie comes out and post a little short review, who knows.
That's where I come in. Yeah, I watched Wicked like a week before I sat down to edit this video, and I just wanted to talk about it. It is a really good movie. I really liked it. I think it would have absolutely made this list. But I had a rule that I can't put in a movie that I watched in 2025, even though it came out in 2024. That's unfortunate. But if I were to put it in some place in this list, I would replace Didi and put Wicked here, because it's really that good. Since there's only so little in the video left, I'll just end it off here. Thank you for the support in 2024, and I will see you in this year. Okay, bye.